brought in Donald Fleming, who was Diefenbaker's sort of right-wing finance minister, to be back of InterVarsity. And so you get in the origins of InterVarsity in Canada a right-wing economic position. To some degree it was a little weak in serious intellectual thought, tended to be very pietist sometimes and not being political, ignored the arts, was weak on environmental issues. And Wilbur Sutherland, who was the head of InterVarsity in Canada for 20 years, by the late 1960s, he began to argue that the evangelical tradition was unrooted ecclesially, it was not addressing the arts, it was right of center politically, and there was a whole range of issues he critiqued. And he forged a new direction in Canada for the evangelical tradition, of which he started an organization called Imago. And someone like a Marcy McDonald, the Armageddon Factor, this whole tradition of a centrist or a soft left of center evangelical tradition has been virtually ignored in the annals of doing history of the evangelical tradition. And so I think a rediscovery of the work of Wilbur Sutherland, Imago, his critique of large elements of the center-right tradition of the evangelical tradition, of which the Mannings come out of which the present Conservative Party comes out of. In reclaiming the evangelical tradition, I think certainly a study of those like Wilbur Sutherland would be very, very valuable to reclaim. But he's virtually a forgotten figure in sort of the culture wars which so animate and dominate things today.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add about the emergent church, the other side to it, Ron, is that as young evangelicals, we were taught, or we inferred, that conservative evangelical equals Christian, that the Roman Catholic Church was not Christian, that the Orthodox Church was not Christian, that the mainline Protestant churches were not Christian because they didn't have the Billy Graham formula or the Campus Crusade for Spiritual Laws formula. What the emergent church has done is that I think is less fragmented in terms of fragmenting, is they've completely challenged that, and they've said, they've repented of the arrogance of saying that we're the only Christians on the planet, and they've gone into a more of a listening mode. So, for example, there's a real draw towards the church, reading the church fathers, to say, of course, the Orthodox, Catholic, and Anglican and these other traditions are Christian. That's where we came from. It's part of our bigger story. And as part of that, the emergent church is I think more into story, less into simply a creedal list that you sign an affirmation to. So in that sense, I see them sidling up to those they'd previously been unreconciled with, and hopefully they'll be good listeners rather than just grabbing a little bit from you and a little bit from you and putting it in a tool belt and going our merry way.
Do you find a tension here, though? Because this has been my dilemma with the postmodern emergent church, is that their actual ecclesial choices lead to greater fragmentation. So on the one hand, they say we want to get back to the fathers, we want a greater generosity, the patristic heritage of the Greek East and the Latin West. We want to read our Ambrose or Augustine, we want to know our Gregory of Nyssa, we want to be soaked in Chrysostom's political concerns. Now, many of these fathers, one of the primary preoccupations was the spiritual, formal unity of the church. And so, to me, it's like trying to have your foot on a boat that's moving away from the dock and your foot on the dock at the same time. You can't say you want to go back to the fathers who were about unity, but in actions ecclesially further fragment. And this is a tension I see unresolved within the postmodern, because genetically they're very Protestant ecclesially, but they almost become dilettantes and voyeurs of the patristic era, and so they have the appearance of interested, but they don't have the substance of it.
Yeah, because one of the sources of the unity of the faith has been a common liturgy. And without the common liturgy, and really a common iconography, source of unity in the fact that the church is first and foremost a Eucharistic society, and everything else comes after that. Otherwise, one can't really ever hope to have any kind of unity with that.
Yeah, you're going to see. You'll see the I would say postmodern young people, especially. You'll see various versions of this. So, for example, you will see some who are, I would say, I see it less as having one boat on the dock and one in the ship, as these folks who are going, what's that big ship? We've never noticed it before. And they're seeing classical Christianity, right? And they're actually coming closer to that ship. As we come closer, there are some that are just in it because the liturgy or the iconography and the beauty of the whole thing is aesthetically pleasing. So there's some in it for that. There'll be some where they just want their cake and eat it too, is sort of what you're describing. There'll be some who say, now how can we bring our movement into some kind of real alignment with these classical movements? And there's a good number that are just saying, oh, since we're close to the big boat, let's just flip over. So we've seen a lot of folks that have come through our church, for example, are just passing through on their way to Anglican churches and Orthodox churches and Catholic churches. And we bless that and even encourage it. The other element to remember is that there's guys like Richard Rohr, who's a full-on Catholic, who's one of the primary voices of the emergent church. So it seems like there's something emergent happening even within the classical tradition. I don't understand all of that, except that if you look at an emergent church conference and whose books are on display, here you've got a Catholic father, and so you're going to get the whole gamut of people. One concern I would have for you, and I'd even sort of warn you about it, is that there's a dissatisfaction with the gray areas that postmodernism has sort of exposed. And that included in the gray areas would be the element of true mystery. Now, if you have a young mind that's a fundamentalist, they get tired of gray areas. They don't necessarily like mystery. They just want to be told what to believe. And so there's this backlash right now in North America of young fundamentalists, and it's a growing group. They're flocking to the new Calvinist churches, I think, but also some of them. I had one young man who left our church to go join an East Orthodox church because he said, I just don't want to have to think about what I believe anymore. And I'm like, watch out for those guys and teach them how to think.
We've already experienced having whole parishes of semi-converts who come in and they want to radically change the Orthodox Church because they're still essentially fundamentalist Protestants, but they want absolutes. And the Orthodox Church really doesn't offer a lot of absolutes. That's and we've already seen that. People searching to be dictated to rather than to think. And they think that perhaps the Anglican Orthodox or Roman Catholic Church are more dictatorial, more absolute, so they will want to go there only to find out